Wait. So, as you guys have done more and more deals, how has your investment criteria changed? What you're looking for whenever you buy a house? Is it location? Is it price range? Is it what are you guys looking at?
It varies. For me personally, we like to have a little bit of mix of everything, minus D-class properties. That's one thing that I dabbled in a little bit at the beginning, and now I'm just like, no, I'm not going to mess with it. But I like to kind of mix it around, have some that are lower priced, higher rent, or lower rent, but then also some that are a little bit higher priced, not as much cash flow right now, but I anticipate appreciation over the long term. But if I just went all into that, I wouldn't be making squat cash flow.
You have a great question. I think it changes over time. You know, I started out in low income, in rough areas. One reason was because no one else wanted to be over there. Now, 20 years later, that's the hottest area in Oklahoma City. But I always do structure, cash flow, and location. So those are the three things that I always think about. If it's in a good location, I know my cash flow may be less. The structure is important. So if it's in a bad location, bad structure, it better have higher cash flow. So those are the three criteria that I look for. But now when I buy property, now it just has to make sense. When I first started out, I had houses. I still have one house and more, you know, and then I was all over the place. I just have a central location. I only buy in Midwest City, Northeast side, and Northwest side. Anybody that sends me anything that's south of I-40, I just don't buy it. And then that's one. And then now I'll actually pay a little bit more for the quality of the property and where it's located. And so before I always stuck with 70%. And so people would make fun of me, you can't do that, that's not possible. Okay, but I do. Now the deals are not as active, I just have to wait longer. It's a long more patient game, but then I probably will buy a brick house over a frame house. So I think the criteria just changes because I want less maintenance. I don't want to have a maintenance crew on. Does that answer your question, I hope? For me?
Yes. So okay. Quick clarification. You say structure, you're talking about how the deal is
building. No. Well, always, if it's on terms, I always will take terms over financing. So if that's available, but you know, it's just like you guys may not know IRAs. You have to convince somebody what an IRA and how you can put it in something. There's a lot of education there. When you do an owner finance, there's a lot of education there. But you can buy owner finance from like real estate investors. I sell them that way because I don't want to manage them anymore. I just want cash flow. So I'm a cash flow buying investor. I mean, I bought a commercial property in Chickasha, an hour and a half from me, just because it's a triple net lease and it's cash flows. And the tenant's been in there for 7 years, they're not leaving. But I would, 15 years ago, I would have never bought a house in Chickasha. That's too far. Because I was always doing everything myself. So it just depends on, I'm very small. Shotgun approach is over with. Now it's like with the scope. These are, it would take me 2 seconds to look at a deal. No.
John, what about you?
I would say for me, I've been selling. I mean, it's a time market. I'm going to sell off my properties. Like, hey, I'm going to sell or finance them off, and I'll be the bank. That's right. Yeah, it makes way more sense to me right now. And there's always going to be somebody eager out there to buy. If somebody's eager to get started and you overpay, you're going to be like me 16 years ago buying a house. That was an escalation clause where you bid on a house and somebody outbid you, and you got to get your highest and best. It's ridiculous. But
it's the greater fool theory.
That's right.
Remember, don't be in the greater fool theory. So just Google that up and read about the greater fool theory. Because there's always, you think there's someone behind you that's dumber than you. Okay?
I would say the other thing that I'm looking for right now, just because we've done it, it's not a new strategy or a newbie strategy, is subject to. It's where someone's got existing financing and they're facing foreclosure. Because it's how you find that one person that they have a low mortgage, or the numbers make sense, or they might have a decent mortgage, but they can't afford their payments and they're going to lose their house. There might be no equity in it, but you now can take over a house for virtually nothing and it's ready to rent. And if you know that process, you're basically going to leave that mortgage in place, and you're going to legally own the property, and you're going to pay their mortgage and leave it in their name. You have to be ethical. I mean, you have to pay their bills. I mean, you actually have to pay that mortgage, but you might solve their problems where they don't get foreclosed and destroy their credit. And if the house works, you might even be able to give them some walk-in money. And we did that. We sold one recently. It was in Edmond that we had. It was the first one we did, and I thought I did it all wrong. Bought it several years ago. I thought we overpaid for it, and we were upside down. We weren't. It was perfect. We sold it, made a nice profit. So you find someone that an agent won't talk to, a real estate agent usually won't be able to help them because there's no money for a commission. So for us, though, you come in there, you might be able to work with them and take a house that's you're solving someone's problem. So that person's in a tough situation, and I'm gonna solve their problem. I'm essentially helping 4 people. The bank, they could be a big business, but they now don't have foreclosure. The person who owns the house no longer has that foreclosure and their credit being destroyed. You have a tenant that's gonna move into it, and then I own a property that's now cash flowing, and now in a couple of years, I can refinance it and pay off their loan, and they've moved on to greener pastures. So, but that's a little advanced technique that works really well, and it will work really well the way the market's good. As soon as it starts to downturn, those are gonna be a dime a dozen.
So Google up subject to, T-O, not T-W-O.
Sorry.
Subject to, if you really want to Google it up, it's subject to the existing mortgage.
Did I confuse anyone without explaining it?
No, I think it's a very powerful tool. I've done a ton of them. It's complicated, but it's not impossible. It just takes some skills. You have to learn the word trust, how to deed a property into a trust, and how to orchestrate a trust, but he explained it perfectly.
Yeah. And I actually was on a mastermind thing with Chad Harris earlier today, and they actually asked me about subject to and land up. Like, here's Augie's number. Call Augie. All right, Wade, did you get your candy?
I did.
All right.
Also, sorry, clarification, you mentioned Class D property. I don't know if everybody knows in this room what that means. You might explain the ABCD property.
Yeah, good point. D-class, everyone has their own little bit different definition, but D-class for me are the high crime areas where I'm more concerned about the house getting messed up. Broken in, yeah, murder one, is a good example of it. A-class, I don't deal with A-class. A-class are your nice neighborhoods. Brand new build. B's,
You're doing great. I'm just
These are your just step down from A. They're not brand new neighbors, but they're still nice neighborhoods. And C are your just what I consider typical, what I grew up in, a normal working family neighborhood.
Well, give them a price range.
C class probably 100,000 or less is what I would look at. B class you're looking 100 and what'd you say 150, 175 class.
We're on the same page.
Anything over that in this market it doesn't cash flow really. That's why I stay out.
Unless you're
And sometimes when people classify properties, it's just the year that it was built and just the quality of construction too. So usually A is brand new and B is like, you're gonna get shot. So. They classify that in apartments is where that really comes from.
Yeah.
Which one, you said, which one doesn't cash flow A class? I couldn't quite hear you.
Oh, we can cash flow.
It can.
But you said
It's
you
hard.
do it because it doesn't cash flow.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Because you're paying top dollar for that. And this depends on what a lot of doctors and attorneys buy Class A properties because they can just park money there and they're getting a return than more than the stock market. So they treat the property like a stock. And when it's a brand new build, when do you think you're gonna do maintenance? 5 years minimum, every house should have a warranty, right? On a new stuff. And then how often are you gonna do maintenance on D class? Every 5 minutes. Every month, every day. What do you think, Zach? I sold you one. This guy calls me up like, when did I sell you that property? A couple years ago, 3 years ago?
2017?
Hey man, you know where the sewer line is? Have you lost your mind? I don't know where the sewer line is at. The sewer line collapsed? See, that's a D-class property. Real simple. How much did you pay?
For the sewer line?
No, the whole house. 20, you got it spoken here.
I'm gonna put 25 because for.
Yeah, I sold to you for 25?
You were sold to me 20, I put 5 in it.
Okay. And there was a bunch of people trying to buy it all at the same day. Because I was done with that property. I almost got shot over there. But how much is that property worth today?
Probably 45.
50. I sold that house across the street for like way more.
Sounds like you could have got it for 15. Okay.
And I felt bad that it needed a sewer line, but I'm sorry. I didn't know where I was at.
So,
How much you ready for right now?
650.
$650, $25,000. That's it. There's an easy ratio. What's the ratio? Someone teach them a ratio. Hey, listen, there's a lesson here. He bought it for 25. He's 25,000. His all-in price. Okay. He's renting it for 650. What's the ratio? What's the landlord ratio for that? Yeah, that's a moneymaker. That's an ATM machine.
So that actually leads me to a question. When you're analyzing an investment, what are the top two most important investment criteria that you're looking at? Is it cash on cash? Is it your capitalization rate? Is it internal rate of return, payback period? That's
That's a good question. Number one, no money down. Can I get an infinite return? How can I make this an infinite return? That's my number one question. Like in my mind, how can I make this happen with little or no money into the game? And then I go into the structure, location, and then what am I going to do with, what's my exit strategy? What am I going to do with this property? You know, sometimes people buy properties just for cash flow, but you might buy properties if you have a W-2. Use a W-2. If you have a W-2, everyone should just at least buy one property or have one small business so you can have a tax deduction. You have a phantom thing called depreciation. So you, like a doctor and attorney, they're buying houses and paying full retail or over retail just because they get the tax deduction.
Yeah.
So all those play a part in the decision making. Can I do this with a no money down? How is that possible? Can I get the owner to finance? Can I be creative with it? And then I just go down the list. But if it's a hot property on Northwest Oklahoma City and it's worth $300,000, I can buy it for $100. I'm just gonna buy it, regardless. But then I try to do 70%, 75%. In today's market, I would probably shoot me, but I'd probably pay 85% for a house if it cash flows. Because now I know I have 20 years experience. I know I'm not going to sell that property. But when I started and I was broke and I had no money, it had to be at 70, 75% ARV, and that's the value of the property. Because I always factored in if I had to dump the property, I have to pay a realtor, and my holding costs are a minimum of 10%. So these are just tried and true things I just never bent from. That's how I got from here to 550 units. From there to here, I never wavered from that scenario. And you probably do the same.
You have 550 units now? Damn.
It's real easy when you buy apartments. So
True.
it sounds sexy, it's not that sexy. I mean, when people are stealing stimulus checks out of the mailbox in these apartments or Cadillac converters, I mean, the smell is great. That's the calls I deal with all day long. Someone just stole a Cadillac converter. There's gold in those things. Did you know that? You need $100 for a Cadillac converter. I don't know, whatever it is. I want to kill somebody. If I see a Cadillac converter, I know you stole. Someone stole a lamp out of my office the other day. I called Lucas. I'm like, dude, ask Lucas what's in there.
So here's a question that one of my friends, actually, Victoria, she's here. She asked a question with because she's a brand new landlord, and she got the Arctic air that came through and froze all kind of. I see a lot on your face, John. So, how did you guys deal with some of those things?
I think we got lucky overall. We only had a couple houses with pipes that froze. We got real lucky. I know I have a lot of friends that had a lot of houses that froze and busted and that were vacant. We just constant communication with our tenants. We were texting, we were emailing, hey, keep your doors open, keep them running. If you're not home, let us know. We got to get the heat off. A couple years ago, we had somebody turn the heat off when they left for Christmas. If you don't tell them not to do it, they're going to do it. They may still do it, but just constant communication.
Okay.
And then when they called and said, a few of them that had something freeze, hey, this froze, can you get it warm? They're like, what are they going to do? Warm everything? No. Sorry.
We have a bunch of properties up in Buffalo, so it's the frozen tundra every year, probably about from August to June.
Megan, you listening? Here's the answer.
These guys, I forget what they cost, but these are awesome. Any house with a crawl space will put one of these on it, and I'll just wire an outlet or just run an extension cord to an outlet that's in the crawl space. They don't even know it's there. And it has a little, basically what you do is you wrap around the pipe. It's a coil. Heat tape. And you just wrap on the pipe. I'm not crawling in there doing it. But you can get a contractor to do it. They wrap it and it sits against the pipe. When it gets below a certain temperature, it turns on and heats the pipe. And that never freezes, and I don't have to worry about it. So I don't have to worry about deadbeat tenants that have to tell to drip their faucet. I will have to tell them to pay their gas bill because they'll turn off their gas until, say, August, and they get their first freeze. And now all of a sudden they don't have hot water, and it's my fault. But other than that, this actually, we look at frozen pipes as often, almost never.
So you just keep it off forever?
Yeah, so it's just leave it in there so it's installed in there. And most of ours have cellars, or basements. But the couple that we have that have crawl spaces, this is great for Oklahoma. That's what we did here. Did it over the Plaza District. That house is fine. The guy that sold the house to, they didn't complain about it yet, so it's worked. So just something else you can try to get on Amazon. You guys can look at the UTC, and they sell all different lines. Another thing I have, which is really cool because I have it for an airplane, is you can use this for a diesel truck. It's the same thing you use for a diesel engine where you have the heater for the oil pan. This is magnetic, so if you have galvanized pipes, which always seem to freeze more because they always have corrosion inside, it's thinner. But if you stick this and magnetically stick it to a galvanized pipe, you can thaw out a pipe pretty quick. It gets up to about 200 degrees, so you won't do it with PEX or something that you can damage, or get too close to your copper fittings where you could mess up the sweated pipe. But this actually worked really well in galvanized. So you just plug it in, and it's just magnetic. You use to heat up an airplane engine.
Andy, jack of all trades over here.
Get all kinds of stuff.
She wants me to clean up the garage.
So, brought some show and tell. I like it.
You guys can look at it. Better get come back.
Yeah. All right.
Do you wholesale more that you wholesale on yourself more, or keep it on yourself, or you look at underwriting before we can wholesale?
For me,
Yeah.
I don't wholesale. I mean, I don't. But if we've bought a couple where I don't like to wholesale. I like to buy and hold. But we found some that we couldn't wholesale. We ended up buying, and it worked out great for us. But yeah, if I get it under contract, I want to have multiple avenues for getting rid of it. I'm terrible at marketing and finding properties, so it's easier for me to have someone else call me and give me a deal. But and like for example, we found one through the church through a Facebook group that somebody was trying to help an older lady sell her house. And we said, hey, we'll buy it. And I was going to initially flip the contract in my IRA. So my IRA could make a quick $5,000. And I decided, you know what? It needed a couple minor things. It needed a termite treatment done, and it needed foundation work. It was a 40-year-old house. It was awesome. It was off the Northwest Expressway, north of Bethany. Man, this is great. And it was a $130,000 buy. We turned around. All I did was fix the foundation for a couple grand. I bought it in my IRA. It's my IRA now. It's Untitled. Fixed the foundation. My IRA paid for it. So it's just like, invested in the project. And then paid for the termite treatment. Had it listed. And it sold for almost 30 grand, about 30 grand more than we paid for it in about a month. So now my IRA just made 30 grand as it sold, and my IRA made the money. Tax-free. I'm sorry? And
Debt-free.
I mean, tax-free. Yeah, in a Roth IRA, tax-free. So I can't use it now, but I can invest with that. And I saw that lady's problem. I just made 30 grand for my retirement when I'm 60. I'm okay with that.
Well, and one thing I want to remind everybody too is that real estate is people business, it's not a house business. We're here to solve people's problems, and that's how we make money, whether we buy and hold, we flip, or we wholesale, or subject to, whatever it is. And I tell people that all the time, whenever you're in this game, if you're going to be in this game of real estate, you need to learn how to play chess and not tic-tac-toe. Because there's a lot of people like, oh, I can make what, money? And then they're gone. And they can go away, and that's fine. That's obviously the business. Or these guys, or you. So, who else got a question?
I do.
Well, hold on. We got a hand. Raise your hand, fool. No, you're fine. He didn't.
So, like, does it just depend on the person as far as starting out, whether to do rental properties or flip?
You're asking me.
I would never do a flip.
I would start with flipping you.
You want to make it long. The favorite word is residual income. So if you do a flip, you're going to pay more in taxes, and you're going to have to do it all over again. It's an inflated job. So if you're going to do the same kind of effort and energy, you might as well get paid for the rest of your life.
Same with wholesaling. If you stop marketing, stop wholesaling, they don't have money coming in anymore. They gotta keep it going. Prime the pump and keep it going.
Try to buy a rental.
And with rental, if you make a mistake, you have 16 years
16
or more to recover from that mistake. You make a big mistake on your first flip, that could be detrimental. That could kill you.
I know those guys though.
Yeah, well, and so I flip and I wholesale, and you're absolutely right. So that's actually one of the next questions I had personally, is that money is really sexy. Like, it's nice to go and put a quick 10, 15, 20, 30,000 in your pocket versus buy and hold. How did you guys go from that point? Because I know you guys, all have flipped, but how is, like, that's just hard for me. Like, right now, that's a hard thing.
Hard for me not to flip anymore, or?
Well, it's just hard to give up that fat check versus doing slow money. Well, see, here's the thing. I don't know. That's why we're here, Steven. That's why we're here.
Do you want money every month, or do you want to lose that money that one time? Because that money's going to burn a hole in your pocket. So you have to have a sense
No, I'm
of
ready to make it.
self-discipline.
I don't know.
You do have that self-discipline. And I know people who have made a lot of money wholesaling, a little bit different, but made a lot of money wholesaling, and then didn't buy any rentals. Now they're going, damn, I wish I would have bought some of these, kept some of these for myself instead of doing all this. We balance it. We do all three.
You know, I met a realtor that his lifestyle is at least $20,000 a month. He's a commercial realtor. He's killing it. He makes $50,000 on a transaction. He probably does one to every other month. Okay, but he has no assets. When he stops, he stops. So the goal is to own assets. You know, and you're a construction background. If you just enjoy it, I would just take that money and then reinvest it or earmark it or do something specific with it. You know, if I get a windfall from somehow, like I flip property, I'm anticipating maybe 10,000, 30,000, and if I happen to get 35, I'll just take that 5,000 and put it somewhere else to make more money to buy another asset or more marketing to test something else that may work, or put it in an investment, a passive investment, or, you know, those are the things I would look into is passive investments, like doing group investing, like apartments and such. But I would not just have big checks, like the government just loves those, because you're taxed higher as a flip than you are as an investor, as a passive. Just Google that up. Taxation, passive, earned income. Just those are two basic things that I would learn in this room. Is if you should lead with anything, taxation. Because you work so hard, you take all the risk, you flip this property, liability, all this jazz, and you're going to pay 20, depends on your tax bracket, on that thing that you flipped. So you think you made 40 G's or 20 G's, you really don't. You're really only walking home with 12. Whoopie-whoop. If you take that money and you could depreciate it out on an asset, and then you can turn around and sell it on terms to somebody else, and you can reap both sides of the benefits, it's just a better game. The laws are written for passive investing. The laws are not written for flipping houses.
All right. Oh, we got Lucas real quick because you say you
Yeah,
got
Lucas. The youngest.
So when lamps are getting stolen, the sewers and all that stuff, you're getting started, obviously you've transitioned to more passive.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of people are starting out wholesaling and other things. It's like, I'm curious, what was your driving motivation to help you get through those things? What made you say, I want to solve all these dirty, messy problems and stick through this weird real estate things? At some point, a person or event put you into that. How has your motivation changed? Like, why do you do what you do now versus then, and how it gets you through the problem?
Ultimately, my first time was like I wanted retirement because I knew that I would never have retirement. And then it was lifestyle, and then it was freedom. But keep in mind, I remember driving through the east side crying, I'm never going to leave this place. Like, seriously, there was many months and times where I was going on a house and they would destroy the house completely. And I could not do, I have to pay for that because you can't, there's no recourse there. It's a risk you take as an investor. But now, 20 years later, I'm glad that I held on. At least several times I tried to quit being real estate. There was a time I had 14 houses. I remember when I met my wife, I had like 5. And I was around about 14 and I was going to donate them to the church. Because there's this pain threshold where it's like you have no money, your water heater, everything breaks, and it's just, you just want to give up. That's where you just have to keep fighting. It just depends on what, I want freedom. The life that I live now, I could never imagine that it would ever be like that. Like, to me, it's a joke. My dream was I lived in an apartment my whole life, and then just to own a house was just good enough. Having all the units that I have now it just gets easier. My mentor was like, when you get to $1,000 a month passive income, it's murder. When you get to $2,000, it's crazy. When you get to $10,000, it's easy. And I was just like, you're dumb. I'm like, I couldn't even comprehend 10. Like, when I got to 1,000, I thought I was somebody special. When I got to 1,500, and then when you get to the 10, it just snowballs. Like, it's massive. It's just, you can just do so much. Like, I met a person like him through a friend. He's loaned me money before. But you guys know where the antique store is on 23rd Street? Okay, I own that, the building next to it. I have no money in it. I met a friend like him, another airline pilot. We became friends. I met him through like a real estate group. Commercial realtor calls me, hey, there's this property, it's 525. Okay, offer 475. It took my offer. I was scared to death. It was 8,000 square foot commercial property. I called my friend, I got a bank. I always get a bank first, but they always jerk you around. So I got a bank and I always have back funding. And this bank was like, I'm only gonna loan you 20% of ARV on the contract price. But he told me on the phone, I'm gonna loan it to you 80% of ARV. Yeah, okay, liar. So I was stuck like I couldn't close because I had to come to the table with 100 and some thousand. So I called our friend and I was like, hey, I have this deal that prays for 650. I need 500,000 for 30 days. I'm going to close it, refinance it out. And he wired me the money in 3 days. I bought that property, $500,000. He only wanted $5,000 for his time. It took me 60 days to close it. That's another problem with investing. You think you can get it done in 30. It took 60, and I have no money in that property, and I have made money ever since I've owned it.
So it's the freedom.
Yeah, and that's $1,500 a month I'll never have to think about for the rest of my life. And now every month, I get depreciation on that asset. It's a commercial, so it's massive, and he's paying down my mortgage, and that area is probably super increased by now. It's Drexel and Northwest 23rd.
Yeah.
But that's the power of private money out of an IRA, a relationship, real estate, understanding it, and having the faith to just do it.
Right, taking the risk is always the biggest thing. I know that, I'm very risk averse. I have very, very risk averse. I'm very high on my risk tolerance. So to me, I always earned an income. I always worked for somebody else. I hardly worked for anybody. So it was always go out and kill it, right? So, Dave Ramsey says, I'm not a big Dave Ramsey fan, by the way, but,
What's wrong with Dave Ramsey?
I just don't like it anyway. But he does say you go out
Throw the dude on the bus, you're gonna say that.
you kill it, you take it home, right? So that's the point I was getting. So, being in real estate, you just gotta take the risk. You gotta take the time, have a couple of grand. There are investors, Andrew Cross and I actually went out to Utah, and we learned that people still buy property at 100% of its value and pay 20%. I want those people to buy my stuff.
You're asking about the hold strategy, buy and hold. One of the ladies was asking about that. And if you think about how much money you need for your current W-2, and say you want to replace it, because I know certain people in the room here that said, I want to have my W-2 job and I want to do it all with investing. You can say, well, if you just took a house that you can finance, and if you can make it, let's say $250 a month that it cash flows, after you pay your mortgage and have a maintenance set aside and management fee, instead of that, you just make $250. You do one of those a year. In 20 years, you have 20 houses. If you do them on mortgages that you're paying right, in 15 years, they'll be paid off. In 15 years, if you bought it right, it probably will double in value. Statistically and historically, it's going to go up and double in price. But the big thing is, if you bought 20 houses, at year 20, that's $5,000 a month. If my math's right, 20 times 250, right? So that's $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year for most people. That's better than the national average, I think, as far as what their income is, and that's passive income. You're going to pay off those mortgages as you go, so more of that's going to be taken on. It's not just going to be $250.
The book that he's talking about is called Creating Wealth by Robert G. Allen. I would buy that book. It's used for $3, but that's a formula that I just magnify. That exact same formula is the exact same formula. If you just follow that formula for 10 years, you'd be a millionaire debt-free. And that's called Robert G. Allen is the author. It's called Creating Wealth. That exact formula, and I just followed that exact formula. I just ramped it up.
I made that up.
Sure.
That's the route Amy and I started on.
That's my
We were
route, too.
planning 15 years, we started 15-year notes, and then after 15 years, our income would just go up. We weren't planning on refining out, pulling cash out as time went on. And now, kind of going back to Lucas's question, for us, it's freedom and time. I mean, we spent 10 days in Disney a couple weeks ago. Everything ran here, and the time I was able to spend with my kids was amazing. Go back 4.5, 5 years ago, we had a lot of freedom with our jobs, but not that much. We go up to Colorado 3, 4, 5 times a year. And having that time with my kids are 9, 11, and 11, I'm twin girls. I'm never going to get this time again with it. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah, Well, and that's one of the reasons too. Like I said, guys, I know we'll get to a couple of questions, but, you know, like I said, one of the main reasons why I want these guys here is because I did see you guys were there, and you know, I had a lot of conversations. You guys take trips all the time, and I love that you, like, don't leave till your kids are in school, and then you are back home before they're off.
When I was on my way over, I'm like, why am I coming to this thing? No offense. I only came here, I was like, I'm just gonna serve Roger, that's it.
He calls me up and says,
I call him, I'm like, that's like, why are we, you'll just start thinking differently, you know? These are precious moments that you'll never get back, you know, and you gotta really consider that you're trading time for money at your day job. So if I was you, don't quit your job tomorrow, but I would. And I would figure it out from there. Go read Rich Dad Poor Dad 5 more times, and then you're eventually gonna go do it. Because the guy never left his basement until his business was cash flowing enough for him to survive. You have to have that level of discipline. You can't just get rich quick as you see it on TV. You have to build relationships. You have to call Andy and ask him. I ask him all the time. You know, he was my first private lender, and how did he do it? Now I loaned out private. You know, it wasn't an easy process, but I just learned how to do it.
by the way, I have a house in Enid, I need to fund.
So, but you have to just commit to it. Maybe it's only 1 hour every night, but whatever you do, hell or high water, set a goal, and I'm going to buy a rental property, and just do it. And that's what I did. I had to raise my hand and bought a house at an auction. I had no idea what I was doing, and I'm glad I did. Now, was it easy? No. Was it terrible? Would I have done it differently? Probably. But I'm just thankful that I just didn't give up. It's painful, and you have to make sacrifices. Are you willing to do that for the freedom that you want to have? Because your job does not care about it. They'll replace you tomorrow.
I want to say something just kind of off here, but earlier you mentioned when you were younger, you weren't educated. I've heard you talk about your story. Sure. He's a great example of what you can do with this. You do what you need to do. You're disciplined with it. If you don't know Steven's story, it is amazing. How you grew up and now where you're at.
Well, here's my simple goal. I was a DJ, and back then I read that Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and I just had this. You can buy a house with $2,000 down. One of my mentors back then sold me a house for $2,000 down. So I was so ignorant. I was like, all right, if I DJ 20 times, that's 2 G's. I'm going to go buy a house, and that's exactly how I bought them. Now, some of those houses, you know, there was sewer lines with concrete in them. I learned to check sewer lines. And some people, there was a house I bought, it didn't have a water heater. I was like, where's the water heater? There was no water heater in it. I checked for the water heater now. But I was so desperate that I would do whatever it took to get in there because I came from nothing. And so I think that's the biggest thing in society. We're just too cushy. Everything's easy. There's and the internet, you just Google it up. I know everything now. I know how to do something too. What he was talking about is very complicated. Can you do it? Absolutely. You should probably find someone to help you through the process. But there's people out there. I couldn't be here without these people that help me. And there's somebody in your life that's willing to help you. You just have to put the time in and you can do it. It's possible. I came from nothing. And it's baffling to be where I am. He's extremely educated. He's a super white collar guy. Educated, top pilot, and then he's this amazing individual. His mind just works 10 times differently than you. You're a little blue collar, aren't you? You're down and dirty. I see you working all the time. And so now I'm not like that. What I was funny is I do, but I have my master's degree. Educated and dumb. I don't understand. If I was making money like that, I wouldn't be working. I just don't work. That's the one thing. This is Roger said no offense. But I know I'm super entrepreneur in my mind. Like I'm always trying to make money. Like I feel like I gotta repent all the time. That's why I like it. But I realized when I had children, and my dad left when I was a kid. My mom had to give my brother for foster. I realized that I can make money later. Does that make sense? And so I only have time. So I really leave that office at 3. Now I lose deals all the time. Right now there's a 14 house package. I'm supposed to put an offer in by Friday. I look at my schedule. I got to be home at 3. I got all these games. My son has practice. I don't even know if I can put an offer. So I'm probably going to lose this $1 million deal. But that's this life that I've chosen because what's more important to me is that now you may not have that situation. You may have to sleep at 3 in the morning because you're going to have to get this education in you as soon as possible. But you can do it. It's possible. You just have to put the work in. But what's more important? The freedom. Would you ever go back?
No, hell no.
And you have a master's in what?
Information science.
Computers.
Yep.
That's my major when I dropped out. See, you got, boom, dropped out.
So,
So what, this would be a good question, let's ask him a question. Let's, you know, you follow the worldly plan. And I'm worldly, I'm not trying to say that like in Christianity versus, but this is a worldly plan, right? You go to school, go to college, all these young people out here, I have to go get my master's, and I teach them, how much more money are you gonna make if you go get a master's degree? They're like, I'm gonna make $1,000 more a month. Oh, okay. How much is that gonna cost you in time and energy? Oh, 50, 60,000, 80, I've heard 100. Are you on drugs? What's your ROI on 100? What's an ROI? I'm like, return on investment. Like you paying 100 and you're gonna get $1,000. How many, you'll be dead by the time you get an ROI. So it's probably not a good choice for you to get a master's, no offense. But the reality is, I would really like to know, what was your defining moment when you were like, this is not gonna work and this is gonna work? You started with this houses at five.
I got burned out. In IT, I just got burned out, and my kids had a lot of health issues,
Okay.
spinal cord surgeries and whatnot, and finally I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I gotta step out.
So life was more important to you than a job.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, freedom, absolutely. All right, we've got time for about 2-3 more questions. So, right here, real quick.
Each of you probably uses now I'm going blank,
Audio.
1031B. How do you use it? And I just found it, and so I'm just like on fire because I had all this land sitting that appreciated, now I'm gonna use it to buy other houses because I don't want to
This
build.
one about 1031 exchange?
Yeah.
Good.
1031s are really a pain in the butt. I mean, it's set up to be difficult. I mean, there's a lot of loopholes where you'll get actually cut and owe taxes on. Like, for example, we sold a house in Maryland that was another $200,000 property, and the market that we're buying here, you're talking $35,000 properties. We couldn't find enough to fill it. We needed to buy 4. We bought 3 of them. So we actually ended up paying taxes on part of it we didn't use, which sucked. So
It's a lot of work.
you have an intermediary, it's definitely difficult. What I would recommend for me, the next time I'm gonna do it, is I'm gonna line up the properties that I want ahead of time before I ever sell the first property. Because you have a very limited amount of time. You basically have 45 days that you can you try and identify what property you wanna buy. So just to simplify, you sell the first property, you have 45 days to find a place to put that money. You have to have a third party hold that money, you can't have it. It has to be set aside so that you're not touching that money. And then after the 45 days, you can't add new properties to that list technically, or you violated it, and all of it's taxable. And then finally, you have to close on anything you're purchasing within 180 days. So it's a pain. So it's a difficult way, but you can avoid taxes that way. I don't know if I answered the question.
Well, there's a couple, so 1031 is like you don't pay taxes if you take your profits and move it somewhere else. Okay, so that's what 1031 is. Here's the one loophole problem. Where you set your money, it's not FDIC approved. So the person that you're hosting your money can take your money.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's some risks involved in 1031. So anyway.
So we've got a company that does that, we basically hire a company, costs us about $1,000. It's about $1,000 now, I think, to do it in exchange. We bought 3 for the one that we sold. We would do it a little bit differently, but you can do it. I mean, if you have land that you're gonna sell, to answer your question, it has to be like kind, and they broaden that. So it doesn't have to be land for land. It could be a commercial building and you buy 20 houses with it, or you buy 100 acres of land and let it sit. As long as you've got an investment that you have a business reason for it, it's very loose now as far as what they let you do. But I'm not a CPA, so don't take my word for it. Marissa?
So mine's kind of a two-parter for all of y'all. So when you're first starting, do you find funding first and then the deal, or the deal and then the funding, or does it change? And how do you do your research when you're just starting? Do you go online and just Google stuff? Like, I have Google sellers that send me some stuff, but how do you find stuff? When you first start, because you're just like, okay, I want to buy, but how do I begin?
Google's awesome, but really getting into, for me, getting around with people that are doing it and then asking them and watching and learning. Right? That's the biggest thing for me. I forgot the first part of the question though.
Do you find it first or find
Find
it?
the deal first, or a little bit of both, or changes?
I find the deal.
Okay.
If you've got a deal, you can find a way to get it financed.
Exactly.
Or purchased.
Yeah, as long as the deal's good, you can always find money.
So we bought an 18-unit package that was from a seller that was a distressed seller and had to sell them. It was out of state. And literally just leave my friends, hey Steve, you wanna go for a trip? Steve was like, yeah man, so I paid for him to fly to New York, Western New York with me to look at a bunch of properties. He thought he was gonna get fun and just hang out in Niagara Falls. It was in February too, so. So yeah, the snow was this deep, but I didn't have it financed. I mean, I was still working on the negotiating the purchase price and what I was gonna make him deal with that. I didn't have financed at all, but what I did was I structured the deal that I closed the first couple and I had private money lined up for that. And then I needed, and someone else said, hey, I'll loan you private money. And I was in an event like this, and I had 3 left to do. It's like, man, I need to come with 75,000. Now somebody overheard me, and he said, hey man, I got 75 sitting in my IRA. I'd be interested in investing it there. And I won't dive him out right now, but he's here. So
y'all were going to Niagara Falls together for a
He likes me.
we did.
That's what I heard.
All right, that's for the inspection.
So you got a landlord, so when do you guys ever consider contracts for deed, so you don't have to deal with the maintenance of the property, and what would be the things that trigger you to do that, to go that route?
Man, I just met with an attorney on a contract deed. I have 60 of those. My maintenance was around $400,000 one year, and then after I started selling all those to contract for deed, my maintenance is $35,000. And my head is. Now, there's a lot of risk in contract for deed. One, you have to file a foreclosure. They have equitable interest in the property, period. So a lot of people don't know that. Number two, when you sell that property in contract for deed, you have to pay the tax on that as a sale if you have a good accountant. I didn't know that. So I had to go back and pay a bunch of tax. So even if they default and they leave, you have to do foreclosure on paper. It's all possible. Contract for deed is like you're really selling an installment, but I still have a loan on the property. So I'm arbitraging in the middle. It has been a very successful thing because my maintenance has gone way down. But there's some risk in there. Like this COVID, I had 2 people that didn't pay, and one person shows up with this COVID deal, like trying to get their rent paid. I'm like, you own the property. Let's just be clear. This COVID doesn't apply to you. Oh. So then now I'm like gearing up to do a full-blown foreclosure. Here's a foreclosure clause. This is the conversation I had with him today. $2,500 for attorney fees, about $1,000 in filing. There's so much legislation on foreclosures in Oklahoma, it's a nightmare. Is it possible? Yes. It's going to be a minimum of 4 months to a year. So you got to factor all those risks in. So 5 G's minimum. Holding costs, if it's $1,000, you're looking at $20,000. But for me, it just works in mine. Well, I'm really cautious on how I structure contracts for deed. I really figure out, is this going to work the distance, and then I put some money back, and now I have this attorney on retainer that handles contract for deeds.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, how do you prep for rentals, like to set yourself up for success so that you don't have just a ton of things going on?
What do you, could you clarify what you're asking?
Like, literally
What's in the house?
inside of the house, and then also screening tenants.
Steven wrote a whole book on how to screen tenants and how to place tenants, and he also talked, and I think he wrote a book about as far as dealing with contractors and dealing with the property. But as far as you're saying, like getting it ready to rent, like when you're replacing the tenant, is that what you mean, or when you're buying it to see if it's a good rental?
Not when you're buying, when you have it instead, before you get a tenant in, how do you prep the house to make sure that you're not gonna have to hear from your tenant? Unless you want to hear.
Well, the easiest way would go to Section 8, even though this is not a Section 8 tenant, and just get their requirements to make it, the house just needs to be safe. So no cracks, nothing, no visible. You can call and request a Section 8 checklist and just go through the whole house. Does the outlets have faceplates? Is the windows shut and open? Do they lock? Does it have fire
And you
extinguisher?
also hire a wait, okay? You hire a wait right over here.
Or you're
And Johnny.
We have a one screening check and we guarantee all of our tenants, so.
It comes with the property class too, because the higher property class, I mean, it's gonna have to be perfect, you know, it's definitely gonna be a different level of what people have that expectation. And if you rent something that's broken, it's kind of hard if you have an expectation to have them fix it while they're there. You know, you need, I mean, I set the bar where it's, if I live there, could I live in this house? Yeah, absolutely, well then that's what I run.
Yeah.
So that's what I
don't do it that way. I just like get them in there so I can get rent. And something's wrong, I'll send somebody over. I mean, it just depends on how, you know, I mean,
lived in total shit.
yeah, like, you time hall. I I think, are you fearful for renting your house out? Why are you asking that question? That would be the first thing. Like, what's your reasoning behind it?
Basically,
He's seen my headaches already.
yeah.
Oh.
So basically, so that you don't.
Well,
have
here's the
to-
thing, this thing called people is a variable. I mean, some lady gets juiced up on me because we have no screens on there. Right, and then there's people that love screens, there's people that don't want screens. People want blinds. Do you offer blinds for people?
Yeah, and that's
You know, some people do, some people don't. There's many years where I didn't offer blinds. It was just like wide open. And then now we put the $5 blinds in there. I think you just, you know, like you said, use a kind of a guide of how would you like it, but someone's always gonna come behind you and they're not gonna like it. And so I have this little clause. You are renting this property as is, where is, this is it in my lease. This is what it is. Now, the law is very clear. What's the two things you need to have in a house, in a house?
Heat, water.
That's it. Hey, we good to go.
There's only things
I mean, people get mad, like, you know, I don't, my pool's not, well, okay.
The big thing for us, we just make sure everything works.
Yeah.
I mean, and if it's not working, fix that crap now. It's easy when nobody's living there. Once they're in there, good God, it's such a pain in the butt sometimes.
Okay, how much is a makeover? A makeover?
3 to 5,000. Depends on what's going on. I mean, it depends if we have good tenants, if they take care of the property.
So I would have a handyman on, ready to roll, and I would always have at least 3 handymen. Like, don't just have one person or one gal. Have 3 and be ready. Because when that, and then what tenants really want is that you to be responsive and that you genuinely send someone there. The douchebag landlords just don't care. Like, I care. We will send someone there. I'll even send a $25 guy, go over there, just assess the problem and do a report, take photos, and then we'll send a real contractor there. Just to appease our tenants to make sure, because we want to be in compliance. We want them to have a great process there.
And if they feel like you're working on it, if they know if you're communicating, then they are a lot easier to work with. If you're just not calling them back because you're trying to find somebody, they're sitting there going, God, they just ignored me.
Yeah.
What's going on?
And do everything through text messages so you have a record.
Yeah.
That's a great advice. So we're gonna have, so I got one last question for you guys. And this is one of the reasons why I want to personally be in real estate is that how do you guys balance your work and your life? I know that's the golden nugget question.
I'm not good at that all the time. I got yelled at tonight because I was still working on some documents and I need to spend some time with my kids before coming here. So I need to refocus. I'm always jealous of this guy because he's really good at it.
I just set the parameter. I stop at this time and I'll tell my wife in advance. I'm like, hey, I need to go look at this house at this time. And if she gets frustrated, I go, this is a long time ago. This is because we're going to be financially free or this is for our retirement. So I think a lot of couples don't have the level of communication of why are you doing that. Well, I'm doing this. Most men are visionary. They're trying to build a future. And most women are just right now immediate. So there's this book, a story I read once where this couple was living in a mobile home. And the wife was pissed off. Like, I hate this tin can. She's angry. She's mad. I can't believe this douchebag makes me live here. But he walks in there every day. One day we will live in a legit house. We're saving so much money. You see the difference? That's how you need to communicate with your spouse if you have a work-life issue. What does it look like to you and what do you want? When I got married, I said to my wife, hey, this is what we're going to do. We ain't going to buy no coat first. Let's just be clear. We're going to have used cars. But one day, we won't get paid. Get ready.
Well,
And I guarantee my wife should be up there. You should have a wife there.
I will have a wife thing actually.
And then ask her, oh, that dude was crazy. He didn't spend no money. He only bought assets. She didn't probably know what an asset was. I was like, we don't need no HVAC. We don't need no cable. We need to buy assets. And so that was our vision. I guarantee my wife thought I was on drugs. And this is another true story. My wife was learning to cook when we got married. I read to her, Rich Dad Poor Dad to her, why she was cooking. I mean, that's how passionate, because you got to get on the same page. And where I'm at today is like, these are just hard, fast rules that I don't go beyond. And I just have to have faith that it's going to work out in time. Believe me, when all this ice storm was going on, thank God for property managers, put my man up. I'm telling you right now, I probably prayed to my property manager the whole time. I was having problems with my own problem, with my own pool freezing up. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to die. you know, it's like, how do you fix a pool? Like, it was sheet ice on that deal. But these property managers, they're taking the brunt of the, you know, and I was like, and I'm just thankful I had very minimal repairs and problems. I mean, I had one big house blow up, but I mean, that's just, that guy, you have insurance. And so you just have to deal with that. That's why you pay for insurance. And when a property manager calls me crying, I'm like, it's not even her asset. I'm like, wow. She's like, we can give you another $1 an hour. You know, the reality, I mean, because she, you know, I'm sorry, Stephen, we thought the house, you know, we thought the water was shut off, we didn't drive by there. You know, can I get mad at her? No, she's human. She made a mistake. Now we have a super policy. Any house that's even thinking about if someone skips rent, we have to drive by. That property manager has to drive by that house. I would make a new rule for your property manager. You must drive by and check that house off. So when FRU's 2022 comes, we print out a list of houses and you must drive by all those houses and make sure they're not vacant. That's where your pipes burst is usually when they're vacant. But you just said hard, fast rules. I'm not gonna, you know, but when this was all going on, I was like, man, pray for these people, you know, but that's why they get paid.
Absolutely.
So you just set a parameter.
Good deal. John, finish this up.
Intentional. My wife and I work together, and we just have to be intentional about it. It's easy to get caught up, especially we both grew up with entrepreneurial parents. At night, I mean, we're talking work all the time, but we have to be intentional about doing the things with our kids and doing stuff with ourselves. We have date night. I'm very intentional about going to my son's soccer practices. I don't think he's getting to that age where he doesn't really like me to be out there on the field watching him, so I sit in my car and watch him. But that way he doesn't have to be seen. But I know in his mind, I was the same. We were all there as a kid. Your parents being there, that's huge.
Big.
So then in the evening, when we get home, dinner, and the kids go to bed, we try not to deal with work too much. If we do, then we try to involve them so they're learning, because that way it's their time.
I definitely kick myself after the fact. I don't spend time with my kids enough, and then it's, man, I just missed another opportunity. You won't get it back.
Yeah, well, and, you know, I'm gonna be vulnerable for a second. So, so whenever I broke my ribs, that was on Mastermind, and I was sharing with the guys that came that I missed out on a ton of property, not a ton of property, I missed out on a ton of time with my family because I was chasing that entrepreneur dream. That woman right there is the grace that I have in my life. And I missed out on a lot of opportunity with my kids. I missed out on a ton of opportunity with her. So if you guys are in that place right now where you're building your business, you're building your empire, you're building your real estate portfolio, whatever it is, there's nothing, and you have children, there's nothing more precious than those kids outside of your spouse.
You gotta keep sight on that.
Got to. So, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, buddy. So, again, everybody, thank you so much for coming. And if you guys don't mind, again, just share the video whenever you guys get home so that a lot of people can see what these guys have to say. And thank you for taking the time to be with us. So, all right. Be good.